Well, I appreciate your coming and Kara's help. And I'm just trying to think when I was kind of reading some of our messages before we
Yeah.
connected today. I was trying to think like what in particular drew your attention to reach out? Because just so you know, not everyone is comfortable or interested in going on a podcast for a variety of reasons. So I appreciate whenever people do. So what kind of brings you here today, or what kind of?
I've talked to a lot of people over the years, have a lot of stories to share. We've had a interesting journey here over the last 4 or 5 years, and all that combined with all the challenges facing our country and the energy industry and such, I figured if there's a chance to get out there and try and make some kind of positive change, it's something worth doing.
No, no, well, I definitely appreciate that. Well, before we get into it, like I said, I'm the first to admit I don't really know you at all, other than the few kind of positive, supportive messages I've seen you write on LinkedIn. So just tell me about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How did we end up talking today?
All right. Well, first of all, my name's Jeff. I grew up actually in Victoria, BC. I moved out to Saskatchewan about 5.5 years ago, mainly because there's just no real future out there on the island anymore. There's not much for industry left, and the way every industry out there has been going downhill over the years, it's pretty tough to run a business out there.
Hmm.
So we're basically out in the middle of nowhere out here, a couple hours outside of Saskatoon, and we got a kind of a general machine shop. We do lots of lathe and mill work, we do welding, we do hydraulic service, work with a lot of construction companies, mines, earth moving companies, all that. And then on the personal side, I've been the first tradesman in my family for quite a long time. Most of my family's been engineers and doctors, and there's no way in hell I was going to go through university, so I became a machinist. And then I got a lot of family in Calgary on my mom's side that's in the oil industry. They've worked with a bunch of different companies over years, more in the management side, but met a lot of engineers and a lot of interesting people through that.
Where are your parents right now?
They're both out in BC still.
Okay.
Most of my family's in Alberta. My family was all in Edmonton, Calgary originally. My parents were the only ones that moved out to BC, and then I moved to Saskatchewan. Basically, everyone else is still in Alberta.
Right on. So you like winter that much, eh? That's awesome. Good to hear.
You know, in all honesty, the cold and snow we get here is better than the 7 months of rain and gray skies we get on the island. I found that a real challenge to. It just sucks the life out of you having +2, pouring rain, and no sun for 2 weeks straight.
No, for sure. So I have my youngest son, or my middle kid, he goes to school out in Victoria, and I have my eldest son, he's building a pipeline out there in the Squamish Coquitlam area right now. And he said the weather, it's just savage. Like, it's
Yeah.
rain days is one thing. He said this is like a different, whole new level of rain. We're always talking about.
There.
Yeah, he's like rain in millimeters is one thing. Once you're talking about rain in tens of millimeters, he said it's just wild, wild.
Yeah. No, it's something I always found interesting is a lot of people talk about how great the weather is out there. It must be something you love or hate, because I couldn't stand it. I'd pick -30 and clear blue skies over +1 and pouring rain any day.
Well, it's funny because like I go out every now and again. My older brother and my mom, they're out on the island in Parksville area. And every
Yeah.
time we go out there, it's just so beautiful and amazing. But you know, you're out there for a week at a time in the summer. You're like, oh my God, there's literally palm trees in Parksville. Like, how is this possible?
Yeah, no, the summers aren't bad. There's a couple months a year that are nice out there, but yeah, so there's a lot of time I wouldn't really want to be there anymore. I lived on the island for 20 some years, and that was enough for me. I was not too keen on going back.
Yeah, right on. So what do you think of Saskatchewan? I was out there for a year and a half on a pipeline job, and I just fell right in love with it. I thought it was incredible. The people.
I really like it out here. I spent a lot of time in Alberta as well, and you know, Saskatchewan is really the underrated gem of Canada. It's the place that everyone seems to discount or look down on, but it's one of the nicest places you can be. You got some of the best people you'd ever meet out here. like the way things are in small towns here, like my water heater blew up a few weeks back, and the owner of the plumbing company is a buddy of mine. I sent him a text on a Sunday morning, was able to go pick up a new water heater. I mean, you're not going to do that in the city.
Oh, for sure not. It's funny too.
Great.
Everyone shits all over Saskatchewan too for being too flat. And so when we were there, this would be 2008 and 9. We built a line for Enbridge through there, and we had a lot of different slopes, not steep slopes, but a lot of slopes and undulating terrain and stuff like that. And I'm like,
It's regional. Like, there are definitely places. Like, you get down south of Lanigan, and, I mean, my first impression driving through there the first time is it was like being on the moon. It was absolutely dead flat, and there was nothing to see. But up where we are, there isn't flat ground anywhere. It's all rolling hills, lots of trees. It's almost more like kind of in around Edson, like west of Edmonton area. And that's not what one thinks of when they think of Saskatchewan.
no, for sure not. So do you imagine like a long-term future out there in Saskatchewan?
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to leave here. We got a pretty good business here. There's been a combination of a while back when a lot economy-wise went downhill in Saskatchewan. A lot of the small towns lost their welding shops and machine shops and such. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of the bigger ones have gone out of business in recent years. Mm-hmm. So unless you want, if you, like where we are, we're just about 3 hours from either of the big cities. Unless you want to take stuff into Saskatoon or Regina, you're kind of screwed. So we've got a place here where people are coming from hours away, so I couldn't really see finding a better opportunity anywhere else at this point.
No, that's good. I mean, it's so funny. I don't know too much about Saskatchewan, but I do know Mo is really supportive of industry, and he's actually very vocal about it as well.
He's been really good. The politics in general here are more supportive of that than a lot of people would realize. Even more so than Alberta at times. You still have a fair bit of pushback in Alberta, and we really don't see much of that here. There's the odd, I mean, like anywhere, there's the odd bit in the cities, but it's pretty unified here for the most part. Mm-hmm. And we have a fair bit of oil and gas too, both in the western side of the province, like more around Kindersley, and then down south towards Estevan. We got a fair bit of oil in both, and of course there's fair bit of coal too. There's that massive mine down by Estevan, and then there's, well, close to half of the world's potash mines are here. We got
for sure
Cameco up north for uranium. There's a lot of a resource sector here.
So I wonder why people aren't more drawn to it, because I mean, it is so attractive, and it seems a lot more affordable than even Calgary, where I am. Calgary, it's not the most expensive place, but it sure as shit ain't the most cheapest place anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't hear. I mean, even since I moved out here, it's became a lot less affordable. Like we used to see houses I got an acreage here with my shop on her, but in the closest town, when I moved out here, you'd see houses listed for $40,000-$50,000, and now it's rare to see one under $100. So it's still cheap compared to Victoria, but it's like land and property prices about doubled over the last 5 years here. So I think
just activity in the industry, is that why?
I think that's part of it. I think a big thing is that farmland prices are really shot up, and that's kind of dragged everything else up with it to some extent.
I got it.
And that would have been 100,000 10 years ago is $500,000 now.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Geoff. We were in. We knew we were going to be in the Regina, Saskatchewan area for about a year and a half on a big project. I think it was like 180 kilometers to 36 inches. Like it was a big 3-spread section. And so I thought, well, let's
a refinery.
No, it was in Clipper back in 2008-9. And so Maureen, I thought, well, shit, let's go out there. We're handy. We'll renovate houses. We'd flipped a couple, and we saw on the Realtor.com you could buy houses for like 40, 50, 60, 70 grand. And we're like, no way. Like, I don't care how shitty it is. Like, we can fix it. We're handy. This is awesome. So we got out there. So we're driving through Regina with a realtor. And I remember this is the middle of the afternoon on a Sunday, because we went on a couple weeks before the job started. And I remember this one nice lady came up and approached us, and I think she was one of those entrepreneur types that works during the day and during the night. And we're like, man, this is maybe a tougher area than we're comfortable, and a bunch of these houses did have doors on it, and Yeah, we bumped it up. We spent about 100 grand to get into a different area. But even then, $100,000. We sold it at the end of the job for I think what we paid for it.
Yeah.
But like we lived, rent free, had LOA during
Yeah.
the time, and
Yeah, I'll tell you, Regina certainly has its areas you wouldn't want to own a house in. It's got areas I wouldn't want to drive through.
yeah.
There are places in that city where if you park your truck and walk away, come back in an hour, guaranteed your truck's been broken into.
No, we definitely had some challenges, unfortunately, when we were there. But notwithstanding that, we just had such a good experience in Saskatchewan because in Calgary and Alberta at the time, there wasn't a lot of big pipeline projects going on. So I kind of pipelined almost right through for 2 years of a bit of a
Yeah.
downturn. So to this day, incredibly grateful. So I have a very, very soft spot for Saskatchewan for sure.
Yeah, and I say, whatever little bad you can say about it, you can put that anywhere. Like, there's places, Edmonton and Vancouver, that'll be just as bad as that. So, yeah, overall, it's pretty good here. I suspect the biggest reason is that a lot of people had just heard all the jokes about Saskatchewan and never seriously considered it.
Well, I probably told a bunch of them myself before I went there, and I'm like, this place is awesome.
Yeah, well, that's the thing you get for everyone is and I've seen that a ton of times. Like a guy who works for me, he's been a friend of mine for years. Met him back in Victoria. He was originally from Nova Scotia. He was in the Navy for 14 years, and he was looking to get out. And I suggested he moved out here. No way in hell, I don't want to live out there. He came to visit me one summer. Next year, he moved out here and's been working for me ever since.
Right on. So if you're in the shops, like machine shop, do you like work mostly around home, or are you still traveling with work much these days?
We still travel a fair bit. It's hit and miss. We don't do a lot of real long distance just because if we're driving 2-3 hours to do a job, it's more economical for him to get someone from the city typically.
For sure.
But like within an hour and a half of here, we do quite a bit. I've got one service truck with a welding rig, and we do line boring on earth moving equipment and such. But majority is around the shop here.
Are you guys experiencing the same kind of slowdown in these major projects like we are here in Alberta?
It's hard to say. Not to the same extent. Like there's the big Jansen mine BHP's putting up's about an hour away from here, and it's been full bore for a few years now, and still is probably another good year or two before completion. I think they've been doing some work down at the big Mosaic mine at Esterhazy, and the potash doesn't really seem to slow down. I mean, especially with the war in Ukraine there, one of the other major potash producers, of course, is Russia. So with that not being an option, the demand for the Canadian potash has gone up a lot. So all the mines have really been in full bore expansion mode. And other than that, there isn't much to slow down. We don't have the kind of volume of massive projects you get out there. So what you do see, big highway projects, upgrades, things like that, are ones that they can't really opt out of. So I'm sure some people out here have noticed it. We haven't noticed anything. We've just been kind of getting steadily busier and busier as it goes on.
Right on. Do you have any family in the industry as well, or is it just you?
In the machining, it's just me.
Okay.
I've got a couple family members who are either current or retired engineers and things of that nature, but no one else who's done the welding machining side of it.
How did you start to get involved in LinkedIn? Because for what you do, I followed a bunch of your comments and posts over the while, and you seem to be pretty active and pretty positive. What got you involved with that?
It was sort of by default, honestly, because I got tired of social media quite a while ago, and I don't have Facebook or Instagram or anything like that anymore. And figured it'd be something with a little bit less of the crap and arguing and bullshit that drove me off of Facebook. So I figured I'd give that a shot, and may lead to a few work connections and what have you. And it's just more enjoyable to be on than Facebook is these days. That's really the only reason I got.
For sure. I've had to, I love politics, but even I've told my wife a few years ago I had to unfollow it all just because it was so negative and it just was really bothering me, and I found myself kind of pissed off about things I have absolutely no control over. So
yeah. Oh, I know it goes real well. I'm very close follower of politics, history, all that in general outside of work. I had a good one just the other day. A friend of mine down in the States who was, of course, not happy with the election. Somehow we got talking about American policy affecting Canada, and the canceled Keystone Pipeline came up. The guy just totally lost it. Like, oh, this is such a horrible thing for the U.S. disaster waiting to happen. And no matter what you try and explain to the guy, he wouldn't change his point of view on it. But he had it stuck in his head that they were scooping the stuff out of the ground, sand and all, melting it and firing it through a pipeline.
Yeah.
Which is not how that process works. And just looking through it through a lens with no facts behind it and not having any interest in learning anything to change your opinion. That's something I don't understand. I mean, I got a lot of opinions, but if I'm wrong about something, I'd like to learn that.
For sure. But like, even I've talked to a lot of different friends who are on both sides of this conversation, and
Yeah.
I find the conversations very intriguing and interesting because I'm definitely open-minded to, but what I found was a lot of people, they've kind of already got their mind made up for whatever reason, one way or another, and so I don't even really get involved. I'm an advocate of the energy industry in general, whether it's oil and gas or construction or trades or whatever. But if you're not, I understand, Jeff. Like, I probably won't be able to change your mind, and I accept that now. So that's probably me just getting older and hopefully a bit wiser.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's a lot of people. Doesn't matter what you tell them. Doesn't matter how many facts you put in front of them. Their mind's made up, and it's not going to change. It's a sad thing, but like you say, there's nothing you can do about it. Just try and keep supporting the industry as much as you can, keeping as much positive as you can out there, and at least the odd person who will listen might change their mind. That's kind of the best you can do.
No, for sure. But one thing I like to talk about when I meet people on these podcasts was, because you're the only one who's really on the machine side of it, tell me about some of the mentors you've had along the way, either personally or professionally, that either led you to what you're doing now or just in general.
So there'd be a couple of them there. The one who really gets the credit for starting me all on this path was my dad. He's an engineer, but he did work as a carpenter for a couple of years back when he was in university. And my grandfather had a construction company and worked as construction superintendent. And my dad grew up on a farm too. He's always liked doing that sort of stuff and always had a shop in his garage at home. So I grew up messing with this stuff. I started welding when I was about 9 years old, such. So that was what got me started in it. And then there was a farming museum nearby us on the island that I started volunteering at fairly early on, did that all through high school and up until I left. And there was a couple of the guys there I learned a hell of a lot from. The one only moved to Victoria in kind of his later years as he was having some health problems, but he was actually a nuclear power engineer by training. Never ended up working in it. He ran pulp mills like as a power engineer for a while, and then he had a contracting company. The guy was a journeyman in about 5 trades, had about 20 other qualifications on top of that. Welder, machinist, pipe fitter, what have you. And I worked with him a lot over the years. We rebuilt steam tractors there, and so that was where I really learned the most of it. Owe a lot to the time with him there. And then another one that's helped me more on the business side of it, because that's something that, I mean, there's two very different skill sets to be good at doing work and being good at running a business. And that's something a lot of people don't seem to appreciate. But my Uncle Ron has been a real big help with that. So I'd love to try and get him on your podcast eventually. He's been a career oil field engineer. It's all he's ever done. He's worked in Edmonton and Calgary in the industry. And I learned a lot from him over the years. A lot of things on the business side, and even in project management side, the engineering side, dealing with suppliers, dealing with contractors. It's the sort of resource that's pretty hard to come by a lot of the time. And that's been a big help.
Do you find at the age you're at now, because you're far from being an old boy, but you're not a kid anymore either. Have you had the opportunity to grab some of these young kids, whether they're in the trades or not, and try to bring them along a little bit?
We haven't yet. It's something I would like to do at some point. We just haven't had the opportunity yet. The biggest issue I got right now is I basically built my company from the ground up with nothing to start with. So the building we're in is suboptimal, to put it nicely. We've got about a tenth of the space we could really use. So it's just physically fitting another person in and having room to work around each other is the issue. We're in the design stages of a new shop now, and once we get that set up and get moved in there, I would like to possibly talk to like one of the trade schools in Saskatoon and see if we can apprentice someone who's wanting to train as a machinist, because there's not a lot of people wanting to go into this trade anymore. You get a lot of people going into welding and other trades, but there's not a lot of machinists anymore, and it's one of those things that there's less demand than there used to be, but the demand's never going to go away. And if anything, the demand for a good manual machinist is becoming higher just because there's so few of them left. And for a lot of the repair work, large one-offs, they're just not practical to run on CNCs. And it's just guys with skill sets to do that are getting hard to find. That's something I'd like to be able to pass on and get another generation learning how to do that still. Because I learned more in their set.
How do we change that to attract more of these young people into the trades? Because clearly the money's there. I know it because my kids went through a SATE here in Calgary. So I know they come out, they crank out kids that are ready to go to work, and the money's there. So why can't we get these people into these trades?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it depends on the trade to some extent. Like some of them, like I pay pretty well here, but there are definitely some machine shops that really don't. They're paying about the bottom of the line for skilled trades. And I suspect, honestly, that's one thing that keeps a lot of people from going into that. If you can make $10 an hour more as a plumber versus a machinist, and you don't have to do all the math, I think that's going to push a lot of people in that direction. But as I say, trades in general are struggling.
For sure.
And that's something that I don't really have a good answer for. I think a big part of it is kind of the way kids are brought up all through school, where it's all pushing towards university. Like I remember when I was in high school, there were two options for math classes. There was the calculus and such for becoming an engineer, and there was the bare minimum to graduate. And I took the higher of the classes, and this 90% of the course was on calculus, algebra, things that I had never used since. Everyday trigonometry, geometry, volumetric calculations. I think we glossed over in a week. Mm-hmm. And it's just the way the curriculum is planned. Like if they actually had advanced classes that were tailored towards people going into trades where it focuses on the skill sets you're going to use, I think that would be one thing that would be a big help. Mm-hmm. And it's just that, that's just the one example. You could apply that to a bunch of things through the school system. But I think that's the root of the problem, is that everything in the K-12 school system is pushing people towards going to university and not going into trades.
We're creating a whole generation of people that can't do the most basic things, or things I think are basic, whether it's change your oil or change out a toilet. Like these are all pretty simple things, I would think, but for some reason we just creating a generation of people that aren't comfortable for some reason. I don't know how to switch that around. All
right, cut out for a minute there. I pretty well heard the start of your point, and that was it.
Sorry, Jeff, I lost you there for a moment.
Yeah, I got you back now. I heard you saying we created a whole generation, and you cut off right at that. So I was just
going to say, because I have friends, and I've tried to be good with my own kids, when we're doing stuff that we take for granted, whether it's change your oil or change a tire or change out a toilet, to make sure we include those kids in those activities so they can get comfortable doing it with their own. Because once they've seen it once, then they have all the confidence in the world to do it. I worry that even some of my own friends, putting up a TV on a wall is so awkward to watch. It's only because they've never been brought up that way. And so I'm very thankful that my father and mother did that for me. That's a gift for me. I didn't think it was a gift at the time. I'm sure I hated it at the time, but I'm grateful for it now.
Well, it's one of those things with my dad. Like, growing up, I never had video games or anything. Christmas and birthdays, I'd always get tools. And, I generally did like it because I enjoy doing that stuff. But there's always the part of a kid who looks at what all the other kids have and thinks, geez, why don't I get any of that? But looking back, I had a roll cabinet full of mechanics tools and a cutting torch and a welder when I graduated. And that counts for a lot more in the rest of your life, what you had after Christmas as a kid.
No. Yeah, for sure. So what would you be doing, Geoff, if you weren't doing what you're doing now?
That's a tough question to answer. I've had a couple thoughts over the years. Like I'd thought about heavy equipment operating. I thought of doing plumbing or pipe fitting. I used to do a fair bit of boiler piping, and I actually quite enjoyed the running threaded pipe because there's enough interesting in that to make sure all the layout to make sure everything lines up right. Yeah, it'd still be another trade of some sort. There's been the odd time I thought about maybe it would have been good to be an engineer, but I really don't think I'd have enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I would say, I don't want to keep you because I know you and I are going to sit down here in this studio when you're
sure. Next time out there, I'd love to.
And I know that, so I appreciate that. But before I let you go, I need you to share hopefully some encouraging words out there, because as you know, and I know, there's so many people struggling finding work and seats and all this kind of stuff. What do you got that could maybe encourage them this next little while?
Well, I can think of a couple things. The biggest one is, even though it's hard to do in the moment, things generally work out in the end. Like, I've certainly had the sticky points here and periods where things weren't going that well, but you keep working at it, and generally you'll get where you need to go. The other thing is don't be shy of talking to people. Like, I had someone just out of nowhere email me a resume a couple weeks ago. They were a welder looking for a job, and I really didn't have a place for them, but seemed like a good guy, had good qualifications, and a friend of mine who has another company, they just lost their welder about the week before. I said, oh, hey, give these guys a call. He went and gave them a call and hired them on the spot. So
awesome.
So yeah, it's just, even if you don't think you're going to get the job, it never hurts to put yourself out there and ask. Generally, the people who are hiring know other people who are hiring, even if they're not. And if you're a good candidate, they're going to send you to someone.
For sure. Like, I've had lots of people reach out to me for work, and I'm like, dude, we don't have anything, but just so you know, hey, I heard these guys got this job up here or whatever. And I find a lot of that going on where people are trying to help other people, and I'm hoping that attitude continues, even though everyone's kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, I agree, because because you'd hope it would go the other way. Like if you're hurting for employees and someone else doesn't need one, has someone coming to them, maybe it'll send them your way. It's just a good way to do business.
Anyway, I hope so. Well, Geoff, genuinely, I appreciate you making the time today, and I will look forward to you sitting down with you, hopefully before too long here in Calgary.
That'll be great. I look forward to it. I had a great time talking to you today. Say, if you ever, be more than happy to come on again anytime.
I appreciate it. Well, you take care, brother, and we'll talk soon, okay?
You too. Take care.